Well, in the wake of Trump's bombing of Venezuela, a new phrase has emerged from the CIA-loving influencer class. You know, all the same guys that got those binders, the Epstein binders, you know, that's the same group. And that phrase is now Maga Isolationists. Here's the headline: heightens alarm what Trump's Venezuela attack means for Iran and Maga Isolationists. Okay. You're a Maga isolationist if you believe in George Washington's ethos that America should not entangle itself in the affairs of other countries. It's almost like these CIA-loving influencers all got their talking points from one place. Watch.
I've seen that there are a lot of people who are very, very upset on the so-called isolationist right. People who have in the past, for example, suggested that the only people who would be against Nicolas Maduro's continued regime are globo homo. For example, something Tucker Carlson said. Only globo homo would want Maduro ousted because he's supposedly a social conservative, which is not actually true. Well, I suppose the administration may have to explain to people like Tucker Carlson that, in fact, it was not globo homo that ousted Nicolas Maduro. It was a conservative Republican president, a gutsy president who makes the calls to preserve America's national security and her foreign interests, her interests in the Western Hemisphere, and her interests internationally, undercutting enemies of the United States, ranging from Russia to China to Iran to Cuba.
Yeah, okay. I love how he loves to mansplain everything to us. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for educating all of us about why we need to just depose foreign leaders. Okay. Notice how he just dropped Cuba in there as well. Just slip that in there. Because, those are the talking points right now, because I guess that's next. The CIA's fantasy is coming true, so the talking points are being sent out amongst this class right now, the MAGA influencers. Even warmonger Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, I shouldn't even dignify him with that title, on board Air Force One, because I guess he's Trump's foreign policy advisor now. He says Cuba should be next. Watch.
Could have done it, and as to this commander-in-chief, he did something people talked about doing. You just wait for Cuba. Cuba is a communist dictatorship that's killed priests and nuns. They've preyed on their own people. Their days are numbered.
Okay.
We're going to wake up one day.
So I love how you're now priests and nuns, but when Ukraine does it, we give them money. See how all this works? Really makes a lot of sense to us, right? And here, by the way, and Iran is next too. They had to pose with this photo. Here's the Make Iran Great Again hat. This is not AI. Donald Trump signed that hat. So Iran, Cuba, Greenland, Colombia. What's next? Let's ask Congressman Thomas Massie, who's been hard at work trying to stop the regime change operations. Congressman, great to see you. Happy New Year.
Good to see you, both of you. Yeah, I thought that was AI too, or photoshopped that hat. Make Iran great again. Give me a break.
It's unbelievable. So if we're being honest, I mean, MAGA was never isolationist, right? The MAGA movement had been quietly co-opted from the beginning by neocons, deep state actors the entire time. So this idea of MAGA isolationists, that you're somehow America first and you don't want us being entangled in foreign wars, that's a problem. You're just like the liberal left. How do you feel about that new term that's being floated around the past 24 hours?
Yeah, I'm used to that pejorative. If you're a non-interventionist, they jump right to isolationists. And by the way, I'm for free trade. I'm not an isolationist. And I just think it's crazy. And there's a few things I got to get off my chest that I haven't tweeted about. Probably I've stayed out of trouble. But one of these things I want to talk to you about is they say that the narco-terrorism is funded by the oil. Remember, this was all started out about the drugs, right?
Right.
And then they're trying to attach it to the oil. And so they say, oh, the narco-terrorism is funded by the oil. If there's one industry that probably doesn't need subsidies, I think it's the drug trade, right? They're acting like it would otherwise not be profitable to sell cocaine unless you subsidized it with oil profits. And so we got to go after the oil too.
Right. It's like the ethanol lobby. Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something. Yes, exactly. That I see. They keep slipping that in there, but once they do it 2 or 3 times, we just accept it and we don't go back. I want to plant a flag here and say, look, the oil is not subsidizing the drug trade. The drug trade, I think, is going to do just fine on its own with or without oil. It doesn't go up or down with the price of gasoline.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm in disbelief, really, that we went, you were saying, what do we call it? Is it a kidnapping? We just snatched a president and his wife. And I wonder what that conversation went like. Honey, do you want to go on this trip with me? Or would you rather stay at home?
Right.
This is crazy. And the other thing is they try to characterize it as a law enforcement activity. And that's why they try to say, well, we didn't need an act of Congress because this is law enforcement activity. And the military was just there to support the law enforcement. But now they're pretending that our laws have jurisdiction in other countries. One of the 4 counts against Maduro National Firearms Act of the United States. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Obviously, our laws don't have jurisdiction there.
Right. And so, I look at this and I think there should be consequences for this. It would affect all of us because we are supporting it with our tax dollars. But there is no authority. There's no one above the United States, the international court we're not a part of. Who can stop us? Isn't that something that keeps you up at night? It's been keeping me up at night. There's no consequences.
If a president has the power to snatch another president from his country, he's got the power to snatch any member of Congress. Like this also concerns me as well. You've got my colleagues cheerleading the president on this, but he is way off base constitutionally right now. All the legal norms are out the window. They're claiming these legal things that even a 3-year-old knows wouldn't work, like that you can't have laws in other countries that affect your jurisdiction ends at your borders. We know this. I joked with one of the gun groups. I said, if Maduro had just paid the $200 tax stamp and got fingerprinted and sign off from local law enforcement, he could have possessed those machine guns and been in compliance with the 1934 MFA.
Right. What's interesting, too, is that Trump was the exact opposite on this position, whether it was Libya, whether it was going in and snatching Gaddafi and sodomizing him with swords, whether it was toppling Saddam Hussein, which, regardless of how you felt about Saddam Hussein, it was none of our business, but was really keeping all of these sort of disparate bands together in Iraq and not causing the destabilization. In fact, he was asked about this, and he was pretty emphatic that it cost us trillions of dollars and untold lives. Watch.
The world would be better off with Saddam Hussein
100%.
and Gaddafi in power?
100%. Now, as far as Assad is concerned,
what about the human rights abuses?
Let's talk. Well, you don't think they're happening now? They're worse now than they ever were. People are getting their heads chopped off. They're being drowned. Right now, they're far worse than they were ever under Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi. And it all blew up around Hillary Clinton and around Barack Obama. It all blew up. Now, one thing about Assad, not a good guy. I understand that. We have to rebuild our country. Our country's falling to pieces. We have $19 trillion in debt. We have infrastructure that's a disaster. Our roadways, our airports, our schools, everything.
So what's really now except it's 38
Who the hell is that?
Yeah, who is that guy?
I want him back. That's the one. That's the version I want. That's the version I voted for. That's the version I thought we were getting. And some people are saying, oh, this is America first because this means we're going to have cheaper gasoline. Well, it is true that we're in Venezuela because of the oil. But here's the thing, folks. They're calling it American oil. It's Venezuelan oil. And what happened is 20 years ago, there were U.S. companies, big oil conglomerates that had contracts to develop that oil. And their contracts got canceled by a government that was 2 governments before Maduro. And so when they say we're going to get America's oil back, no, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get the oil for Exxon and Citgo and these other big companies. This is not going to be for Americans. They're going back to they're putting our soldiers' lives at risk. They're turning a country upside down in order to make these oil companies more profitable. I've thought this is another thing about MAGA what I signed up for was we're putting Americans first, not American corporations first. But right now, these are basically, our military's acting as mercenaries. And the vice president is admitting as such, and so is the president. They're basically mercenaries to go in and steal this oil for the United States to get it back or to make these contracts whole after 20 years. And here's the thing, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this too, but in Kentucky, if somebody were to squat on my farm and they could get away with it for 7 years, and they keep adverse and notorious possession of my property, the state of Kentucky says after 7 years, that's their property now because you went too long without getting it back. There is a statute of limitations on these things. You can't say, oh, we didn't like the way you ended our contract 20 years ago, and so we're going to send our military in and take your oil from you. Doesn't work that way.
There's two books that I think are really worth reading if you want to understand how we get those contracts. The first is called The Hidden Hand of American Hegemony, and the second is Confessions of an Economic Hitman. So those are not contracts that were ever on the up and up. If you look at the history of how we secure the petrodollar, how we came about that, we cheated. We promised other countries we wouldn't do that, and we did that. And now we're pretending that we were always had a right to it. Now, you mentioned the vice president, so I'd like to put his tweet up. It seems to me that he is tweeting from despair because he knows that this will cost him politically. I thought that he would know better, that the country that sanctioned Venezuela's economy into poverty and flooded their region with CIA-run drug routes would not be their savior. That seems pretty obvious to me. I thought he would know better. What do you read into the way he's excusing this?
I want the other version of J.D. Vance, who was America first and would not have been for regime change. J.D. Vance was a non-interventionist as a senator. He and I worked together on issues dealing with Ukraine when, the government was going to seize Russian assets, like the United States was going to seize Russian assets and then use that to subsidize Ukraine. J.D. Vance and I came to the same conclusion. We said, no, actually, what you're doing, the only Russian assets there are in the United States are treasury bonds. What you're saying is you're going to default on the debt to Russia. And what's that going to say to the other countries around the world? It's going to drive up interest rates, the price at which we borrow debt if we default to Russia on the debt that they own of ours. In any case, that was one of those things that J.D. Vance and I worked on together. He was not for pouring more money into Ukraine, and he was not for cheating other countries, regardless of how bad they might be, out of things that we legally were contracted to give them. So I am definitely disappointed in his attack on this. He's made, and again, on the drug issue, they're trying to conflate fentanyl with cocaine, and he's sort of been in that lane too of doing that. There are no charges of fentanyl against Maduro. It's all cocaine. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but fentanyl is the scourge that's killing our children right now. And it's, cocaine is a problem too, but I know a few MAGA people that use cocaine. I'm not one of them, but it's not fentanyl.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And if we're looking squarely at China for fentanyl problems, of course, but we won't admit that. We'll blame it all on Venezuela, of course.